Underneath the hood on the driver's side, there's going to be this plastic shield right here. We want to go on over to this little tab right here. Pull on that tab and lift up on this. Do another tab right here. Pop that up and out. From the passenger side, I want to go ahead and lift up on the other half. And pull up on this here. Work this up and out. There's going to be the front section here. We're going to go ahead and separate these here. Just go ahead and set that aside. We have our cross brace right here. There are 3 12mm nuts here and 3 on the passenger side. I want to go ahead and remove those. I'm going to go ahead and pop out our side cover right here, set that aside. So this unit here would normally have a 10mm bolt on the backside to another bracket. Ours is missing. So at this point here, I'm going to go ahead and try and lift up on this cross brace. Let's go back to the driver's side. Using a 10mm socket and extension, we're going to go ahead and get to this bolt on the back side here. And on the front side of it, I'm going to go ahead and remove this bolt right here. Go ahead and set those aside. Now we can go ahead and pull up on this crossbar. Set that aside. Let's go ahead and use a 17mm socket. We're going to remove the 3 nuts on the strut tower here. Using a 19mm socket, let's go ahead and remove our lug nuts. Here, remove the wheel, set it aside. Using a 10mm socket, I want to go ahead and remove the nuts holding the ABS wire in place. Set that aside. On the other side of the knuckle, for our brake flex line, there are 2 10mm bolts right here. Let's go ahead and remove those. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and grab that wheel, rotate that out a little bit. I'm going to use a 17mm socket, and we're going to remove our nut on the bottom of our strut bolt here. Go ahead and set that aside and grab your wheel assembly here. Go ahead and line it up. Now we're going to go ahead and put a jack underneath our control arm. And we're just going to apply some pressure to the lower control arm. Not going to lift it off the ground. We just want to support it. All right. It's just making contact with the control arm. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove the nut from our upper control arm to the knuckle. Use a 15mm socket to go ahead and remove this nut. Now we're going to keep this nut on just a few threads here. I'm going to go ahead and strike the knuckle to release the upper control arm ball joint here. Using a pry bar, we're going to go between the spring and the upper control arm, push this down. Go ahead and remove that nut. Then go ahead and release the upper control arm. You want to hold on to the brakes and the knuckle, like so. I'm going to take a small bungee cord. I'm going to go up and around the control arm. What we want to do is we want to make sure that our knuckle doesn't pull too far away. We don't want to add any premature stress or pressure to this flex line here. We're just going to hook that on there like that. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and lower our jack. We can use a 17mm socket and a couple extensions to go ahead and start loosening this bolt. Just going to unthread this here while pushing on the other side and get this bolt out from the lower portion of the strut. Just going to switch over to our impact gun here to speed things up. And grab the strut, kind of wiggle it around a little bit, pull that bolt out. On the back side of our strut where the clevis fork meets it, there's a 14mm bolt on the back side. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove it. This bolt works with the clevis fork and it creates a clamping force holding the strut into the fork itself. With the bolt loose, we should be able to go ahead and pull the strut out of the fork. Going to use a chisel here underneath the lip and just kind of pop that up and out. You see it starting to come out. So after using our chisel to go ahead and work the strut upward, we're going to now use our hammer, and we're just going to go ahead and strike the clevis fork and pop that down. Let's go ahead and pull that strut down and out. With the spring secured, we're going to go ahead and loosen the upper nut on our strut. Our nut is spinning with the strut shaft, so we're going to go ahead and use a wrench and an Allen key to go ahead and remove that nut the rest of the way. So we're going to go ahead and remove the nut off of the top of this. When I'm prepared, once that nut comes off, the strut itself may drop out from the coil spring. So we're going to get this close. And pop that off there. And we'll go ahead and remove the nut and the washer off the top. Go ahead and work that strut out from the bottom. We'll go ahead and take our bellows boot and our bumper. Slide that down. And take our washer there. I'm going to go ahead and feed this up into the spring. The pigtail of your coil spring needs to set right inside this notch. Just like so. Make sure it's nice and snug. Do the same on the top. Go ahead and install the washer on the top. Install our new nut on the top here. Gonna line up our pad. With everything lined up here. Now what we're gonna do is snug down this nut until it pretty much bottoms out. We'll snug it down at that point. And what we also want to do is make sure that our spring is sitting in the tray This looks good. I'm going to tighten this down a little bit more. All right, we're bottomed out, nice and tight. And I'm slowly going to start releasing the spring here. As we do so, we're going to go ahead and confirm, make sure that the tail of the spring here is fitting into the spring tray, right into the insulator pad there, or isolator pad. And there we have it. I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the tool, and we'll go ahead and get this installed in the vehicle. Go ahead and take your strut, feed this up and into place. And on the bottom of your strut here, there's going to be a little tab. You want to make sure that tab is facing backward. If you want, you could feed your strut up and into the body. And if you want, you can reach up over the fender and install one of the nuts on there. That'll just hold it in place for you. On the base of the strut, if you want, you can put a light coating of grease on here. It's going to help it slide into the clevis fork a little bit easier. You don't have to do this. It's just a practice I like to do. At this point here, you can grab that clevis fork and go ahead and start working that up and onto the strut. So now that we have the clevis fork slipped onto our strut, we're going to line up our strut and we're going to use our jack underneath the control arm. Go ahead and raise this up and into position. It might take a little bit of finessing with the jack and manipulating this unit to get that fork lined up. Now that we have our bolt in there, I'm going to go ahead and jack this up some more. While we're jacking this up, we'll go ahead and get our strut pushed into that clevis fork, and then we'll get that back bolt in. All right, so on the back of the strut, making sure that the slit on the back lines up with the tab on the back of your strut. Jack that up into position, put some tension on there. We're now going to go ahead and get our bolt installed on the back side. And we'll tighten down that bolt for the clevis. Go ahead and torque down the clevis fork bolt to 32 foot-pounds. Now we can go ahead and get our knuckle installed to our upper control arm. Go go ahead and remove that strap or your bungee cord, whatever you were using. Go ahead and get that lined up. At this point here, you can go ahead and lower your jack. And go ahead and pull that out from underneath the vehicle. Okay, let's snug that down into place. Let's go ahead and torque our ball joint nut to 32 foot-pounds. All of your 10mm bolts to anchor the brake line and ABS. Once we have all these started, let's go ahead and snug those down. Once those bottom out, just give it a little bit more just to hold them in place. They don't have to be super tight. Bottomed out, just a little bit more. I'm going to install our clevis nut here, zip that down. Once that's bottomed out, we'll go ahead and torque that to 47 foot-pounds. Just going to install our other two strut nuts here. I'm going to go ahead and snug those down. Let's go ahead and torque these down to 44 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and install our wheel. I'm going to get all of our lug nuts started by hand. And once these are all on, I'm going to go ahead and snug them down. Let's go ahead and torque our wheel down to 80 foot-pounds. Now with the tires on the vehicle and it's on the ground, on level ground that is, I'm going to go ahead and install our cross brace here. We can go ahead and get the 3 nuts started on our driver's side cross brace here. go ahead and get our bolt started here. And we'll get our bolt started for our bracket in the back here. Let's go ahead and snug down this bolt here. All right, let's go ahead and tighten down the bolt in the back here. Go ahead and tighten down the bolts on this side here for the cross brace. All right, with those tight, I'm going to go ahead and repeat for the other side. Now, if you have that bolt for the back bracket over here, you want to go ahead and install that now. Ours doesn't have it. Install our plastic side piece. Take the passenger side cover here. Let's go ahead and get this installed. Install the driver's trim here. Now you want to go ahead and bring the vehicle down and get your alignment taken care of.